The first red flag should have been when my wife Riley suggested we make Valentine's Day special this year by inviting her ex-boyfriend Tyler to our romantic dinner. But like most husbands who've been married for 8 years, I'd learned to pick my battles carefully. "Don't be jealous, Eric," Riley said, applying her lipstick in our bedroom mirror while I stood there holding the reservation confirmation for Chez Laurent, the fancy French place that cost me 2 weeks of overtime pay. Tyler's just going through a rough patch with his divorce. It'll be fun having him join us. Fun, right. About as fun as a root canal performed by a blindfolded dentist. I'm Eric Hensley, 38 years old, union electrician for the city of Millbrook, Ohio. I fix power lines when storms knock them down, rewire houses when people try to install ceiling fans, and nearly burn their homes down. And apparently, I also fix broken marriages by letting my wife's ex-boyfriend crash our romantic dinners. "Riley, sweetheart," I said, trying to keep my voice level, "when you say join us, do you mean like a third wheel, or are we talking about some weird polyamorous situation here? Because I gotta tell you, my insurance doesn't cover therapy for that kind of trauma." She laughed, but not the good kind of laugh. The kind that makes you feel like you just asked if the earth was flat. "You're being ridiculous. Tyler and I are just friends. We've been friends since high school." "Friends, sure. The kind of friends who text each other at midnight and whisper in corners at neighborhood barbecues. The kind of friends who have inside jokes that make everyone else feel like they're watching a foreign movie without subtitles." Tyler Grant was everything I wasn't. 6'2", where I was 5'10", personal trainer at the fancy gym where Riley had suddenly started spending 3 hours a day working on her core. The kind of guy who wore designer workout clothes to pick up groceries and somehow made it look natural. Me? I wore Carhartt work pants and steel-toed boots. And my idea of working out was carrying 50-pound spools of electrical cable up 3 flights of stairs. "Besides," Riley continued, "you two might actually like each other if you gave him a chance. You have more in common than you think." "Like what?" "We both know what you look like naked?" The slap came fast, but not unexpected. Riley had been getting more physical lately when I made jokes she didn't appreciate, which was most of them. That was completely inappropriate, Eric. Tyler's a good friend, and he's been nothing but respectful to our marriage. Respectful. That was a good one. Real respectful of him to send my wife workout videos at 11 p.m. Real respectful to accidentally brush against her every time he came over to use our pool. Real respectful to call her babe in front of me, and then laugh it off like it was some kind of innocent nickname. But I kept my mouth shut because that's what good husbands do. We swallow our pride, smile politely, and pretend we don't notice when our wives start wearing matching workout outfits with their friends. Chez Laurent was the kind of place that made you feel underdressed even when you wore your best suit. I'd made the reservation 6 weeks ago, specifically requesting the corner table by the window where Riley and I had our first real date 9 years ago. The maitre d' remembered us, smiled warmly, and led us to what should have been our intimate table for 2. Except it wasn't 2 anymore. Tyler was already there, sitting in my chair, wearing a black dress shirt that probably cost more than my monthly truck payment. He stood up when he saw Riley, gave her a hug that lasted about 3 seconds too long, and then extended his hand to me like we were meeting for a business lunch. "Eric, man, thanks for letting me crash your romantic evening. Riley told me you insisted I come." I looked at my wife, who was suddenly very interested in studying the wine menu. "Did she now?" "I just thought it would be nice," Riley said, not looking up. "The 3 of us spending time together." The waiter appeared, a thin man with a French accent that sounded about as authentic as a $3 bill. "Good evening. Will you be having wine with dinner?" "Absolutely," Tyler said, taking charge like he was hosting the dinner. "Bring us a bottle of your best Cabernet. Price is no object." Easy to say when you're not paying. I watched Tyler order for all 3 of us, watched him pull out Riley's chair, watched him compliment her dress while I sat there, feeling about as useful as a screen door on a submarine. The conversation flowed between them like they were the couple, and I was the awkward third wheel. They talked about people I didn't know, places I'd never been, inside jokes that made them laugh while I smiled politely and wondered what the hell I was doing there. Remember that time in Cancun when we got caught in that thunderstorm? Tyler said, reaching across the table to touch Riley's hand. Oh my God, yes. We were soaked to the bone, running through the resort trying to find our room. I took a large gulp of wine. When was this? They exchanged a look. One of those looks that couples share when they're remembering something intimate. Last month, Riley said casually, like she was mentioning a trip to the grocery store. I told you about it. No, she hadn't told me about it. She'd said she was going to a work conference in Cleveland. But apparently, Cleveland had been upgraded to a romantic Mexican beach vacation with her ex-boyfriend. Must have slipped my mind, I said. You know how forgetful I get when my wife lies to my face. The table went quiet. Tyler cleared his throat and took a sip of wine. Riley's cheeks flushed red. Eric, don't make a scene, she whispered. A scene? Sweetheart, I'm just trying to keep up with the conversation. It's hard when I'm apparently the only person at this table who doesn't know about my wife's secret vacation with another man. Tyler leaned forward, his voice taking on a condescending tone that made my teeth itch. Look, Eric, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Riley and I are just friends. We've always been friends. If you can't handle that, maybe the problem isn't with us. Maybe the problem isn't with us. Like they were a team and I was the outsider causing trouble. I looked at my wife, really looked at her, and saw something I'd been trying to ignore for months. She wasn't embarrassed by Tyler's comment. She was nodding along with it. You know what? I stood up, pulled out my wallet, and dropped $200 bills on the table. You're absolutely right, Tyler. The problem is definitely with me. I picked up Riley's hand and placed it in Tyler's. She's yours now. I don't want a wife like that. Riley's mouth fell open. Eric, what are you doing? Something I should have done months ago. I looked around the restaurant, where other diners were starting to stare. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to meet my wife, Riley, and her boyfriend, Tyler. They're celebrating their romantic getaway to Cancun. I wasn't invited, but apparently I get to pay for dinner. I walked out of that restaurant with my head held high, leaving behind 8 years of marriage and what was left of my dignity. But for the first time in months, I felt like myself again. The real Eric Hensley was back, and he was pissed. Moving out of your own house is like performing surgery on yourself. You know it's necessary, but every cut hurts like hell. I found a furnished apartment above Moretti's Pizza, 3 blocks from the house Riley and I had bought together. The place smelled like pepperoni and broken dreams, but the rent was cheap and the landlord didn't ask too many questions about why a married man needed a bachelor pad. My work buddy Vince helped me move my stuff. Vince Kowalski was 40 years old, built like a refrigerator, and had been divorced twice. He was also the only guy I knew who could make electrical work sound like stand-up comedy. So let me get this straight, Vince said, carrying my toolbox up the narrow stairs. Your wife goes to Mexico with her ex-boyfriend, lies about it, then invites him to your Valentine's dinner, and somehow you're the bad guy? According to Riley's mother, yes. She called me this morning to tell me I'm an embarrassment to the family and Tyler would make a much better husband. Vince set down the toolbox and stared at me. Her mother said that? Barbara never liked me. She thinks I'm not good enough for her precious daughter. Apparently, fitness trainers rank higher than electricians in whatever social hierarchy she's using. What does Riley say? I pulled out my phone and showed him the 17 text messages my wife had sent since last night. She says I misunderstood the situation, that Tyler's just a friend going through a hard time, that I embarrassed her in front of the whole restaurant, that I need to apologize to both of them if I want to save our marriage. Vince read through the messages, his expression getting darker with each one. Jesus, Eric, she's gaslighting the hell out of you. Tell me something I don't know. We finished moving my stuff in silence. When Vince left, I sat on my new couch, which came with mysterious stains and the lingering scent of previous tenants' poor life choices, and tried to figure out what came next. The answer came 3 days later when I stopped by the house to pick up my mail. Riley's car was in the driveway, but so was Tyler's custom Jeep Wrangler with the vanity plates that read, Fitty Guy. Real subtle. I used my key to get in, figuring it was still technically my house too, and immediately heard voices coming from the kitchen. Not just talking voices, laughing, intimate voices. God, I thought he'd never leave, Riley was saying. Did you see his face when you ordered the wine? I thought he was going to cry. Tyler's laugh was deep and satisfied. Poor guy had no clue. You've been playing him for months. It wasn't that hard. Eric's not exactly the sharpest tool in the shed. He actually believed I was going to work conferences. How many conferences have we had now? 4. Maybe 5 if you count that weekend in Chicago. My blood turned to ice water. 5 secret trips. 5 times my wife had lied to my face and gone off with another man while I worked overtime to pay for her business expenses. The best part, Riley continued, is that he's so desperate to keep me happy, he'll probably apologize and beg me to take him back. Then we can go back to sneaking around until I figure out how to get rid of him permanently. Why not just divorce him? Because then I'd have to split everything 50-50. This way, if I play it right, I can get him to leave voluntarily and keep the house, the savings, everything. I just need to push him a little further. I stood in my own hallway, listening to my wife plan my destruction, and felt something cold and calculating settle in my chest. The old Eric would have confronted them, would have shouted and made threats and given them the dramatic scene they were probably expecting. But the old Eric was gone, replaced by someone smarter and infinitely more dangerous. I quietly backed out of the house, got in my truck, and drove to the hardware store. If Riley wanted to play games, I was going to teach her the rules. The first rule of war is knowing your enemy. The second rule is making sure they don't know you're fighting back until it's too late. I spent the next week doing reconnaissance. I followed Tyler to his gym, watched him flirt with half the women there while texting my wife. I sat outside Riley's office and saw her having lunch with her friends Jess and Amber, the same friends who'd been covering for her affairs. I also did something Riley never expected from her not very sharp husband. I hired a private investigator. Danny Morrison was a retired cop who specialized in cheating spouse cases. He had cameras the size of buttons and recording equipment that could pick up conversations through walls. For $500, he gave me everything I needed to destroy my wife's carefully constructed lies. The photos were damning. Riley and Tyler holding hands at restaurants across town, kissing in the parking lot of his gym, entering hotel rooms together. But the recordings were pure gold. Eric's so pathetic, Riley's voice came through crystal clear on Danny's audio equipment. He actually thinks I love him. I haven't loved him in years. Then why stay married? That was Jess, Riley's best friend and apparently her accomplice. Security. He makes good money and he's too stupid to hide it. I've been moving money to my personal account for months. When I'm ready to leave, I'll have enough to start over with Tyler. What if he finds out? He won't. Eric's not smart enough to figure it out. He still thinks I'm the sweet girl he married. I listened to that recording 5 times, memorizing every word, every laugh, every casual cruelty. By the time I was done, the old Eric was completely dead. What emerged from his ashes was someone Riley had never met and wouldn't recognize until it was far too late. The war was about to begin and she had no idea she'd already lost. The beauty of being an electrician is that you understand how things work. Circuits, connections, cause and effect. You also understand that the most devastating failures happen when people think they're safe. Tyler's gym was called Elite Fitness, which was about as elite as a gas station hot dog. But it was where he spent most of his time when he wasn't screwing my wife. So it seemed like the perfect place to begin his education. I waited until Tuesday morning when I knew Tyler would be there, training his regular clients. The parking lot was full of expensive cars and oversized egos. Tyler's Jeep was parked in the spot closest to the door, because of course it was. The beautiful thing about custom tires is that they're expensive and hard to replace. The even more beautiful thing is that letting the air out of them isn't technically vandalism. It's more like a practical joke with a $200 punchline. I worked quickly using a small tool to depress the valve stems on all 4 tires. Within 10 minutes, Tyler's pride and joy was sitting on its rims like a deflated balloon. I left a note under his windshield wiper. Next time, I'll use super glue. A concerned neighbor. But that was just the opening act. The real show happened that evening at Murphy's Tavern. the local bar where half the neighborhood went to drink away their problems. I knew Tyler would be there because Jess had posted about it on Facebook, tagging both Tyler and Riley in a photo of them doing shots. I arrived early and positioned myself at the bar, where I could see the whole room. When Tyler walked in with his usual swagger, I was ready. "Hey, Danny," I said loudly into my phone, making sure my voice carried across the bar. "Yeah, I got those test results back from the clinic. You're not going to believe this." Several people at nearby tables turned to look. In a small town like Millbrook, everyone loves a good piece of gossip. "The guy's been sleeping with how many women?" I continued, glancing over at Tyler, who was now paying attention. "Jesus, no wonder his wife left him. And he's still seeing that married woman? What's her name? Riley something?" Tyler's face went white. He started walking toward me, but I kept talking. "Yeah, the electrician's wife. Poor bastard has no idea his wife's been making the rounds. This Tyler guy's like a one-man STD distribution center." "Hey!" Tyler grabbed my shoulder and spun me around. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I looked at him with innocent confusion. "I'm sorry, do I know you?" "You know exactly who I am, and you know that's all bullshit." The entire bar was watching now. I could see Riley's mother Barbara sitting in a corner booth with her church friends, her mouth hanging open. "Oh, you must be Tyler," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Danny, I gotta go. The guy I was telling you about just walked in." I hung up and turned back to Tyler. "Small world, huh? You son of a bitch. You can't just spread lies about people." "Lies?" I pulled out my phone and showed him one of Danny's photos. "Which part was the lie? The part where you're screwing my wife or the part where you're screwing half the women at your gym?" Tyler lunged at me, but I was ready. I stepped aside and let him crash into the bar stool. He went down hard, knocking over 2 drinks and landing in a puddle of beer and broken glass. The bartender, a mountain of a man named Big Jim, appeared between us. "That's enough. Tyler, you're cut off. Eric, maybe you should call it a night too." I dropped a 20 on the bar and headed for the door. As I passed Barbara's table, I stopped and smiled politely. "Evening, Mrs. Chen. How's that wonderful future son-in-law of yours working out?" Her face turned the color of a fire engine, but she didn't say a word. Outside, I could hear Tyler shouting at someone on his phone. Probably Riley, telling her that her husband had just destroyed his reputation in front of half the neighborhood. Good. Let them panic. Let them wonder what I knew and what I was planning to do next. Because this was just the beginning. The next morning, I woke up to find my truck vandalized. Someone had keyed "loser" into the driver's side door and slashed 2 of my tires. A neighbor told me she'd seen Tyler running away from my apartment building around 3 a.m. I called the police and filed a report, making sure to mention Tyler by name and provide the neighbor as a witness. Then I called my insurance company and documented everything. But I also did something else. I drove to the electronics store and bought a dozen small security cameras. If Tyler wanted to play dirty, I was going to make sure the whole world could watch. That evening, I installed cameras around my apartment building, my truck, and anywhere else I thought Tyler might strike next. But the most important camera went in my pocket, because I had a feeling the real fireworks were about to begin. Riley called me that night, her voice shaking with rage. "What the hell is wrong with you, Eric? Tyler told me what you did at Murphy's. How could you embarrass me like that?" "Embarrass you? Sweetheart, I haven't even gotten started yet. This has to stop. We need to talk, face to face. Come over tomorrow night and we'll work this out like adults." I almost laughed. Adults? Is that what we're calling it when you lie to your husband and screw your ex-boyfriend? "I never cheated on you." "Riley, honey, I have photos. I have recordings. I have hotel receipts. The only thing I don't have is respect for you anymore." The line went quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was different, colder. "You want a war, Eric? Fine. But remember, you started this." "No, sweetheart. You started this the first time you lied to me. I'm just going to finish it." I hung up and sat back in my stained recliner, feeling more alive than I had in months. Riley thought she was dealing with the same pushover she'd been manipulating for years. She was about to learn how wrong she was. The thing about small towns is that reputation is everything. Lose that, and you might as well move to another state. Riley was about to get a masterclass in social destruction. courtesy of her not very sharp husband. I started with the neighborhood Facebook group, a digital cesspool where housewives shared recipes and complained about teenagers driving too fast. It had over 800 members, including most of our neighbors, Riley's coworkers, and half the local business owners. I created a fake account using a stock photo of a middle-aged woman and the name Concerned Neighbor. Then, I posted a carefully worded message that would spread like wildfire. Ladies, I feel terrible sharing this, but I think we all deserve to know what's happening in our community. I witnessed something very disturbing at Murphy's Tavern last night, involving a married woman and her boyfriend. They were being very inappropriate in public, and when the woman's husband confronted them, the boyfriend became violent. I won't name names, but the woman works in HR at Datatech Solutions and lives on Maple Street. We should all be careful about who we trust with our personal information. I posted it at 8 a.m., right when the neighborhood gossip network was most active. By noon, it had 47 comments and 62 shares. But that was just the appetizer. The main course required a trip to Tyler's gym during peak hours. I'd done my homework and knew he had a client consultation at 2 p.m. with Jennifer Walsh, the wife of a local car dealership owner. Jennifer was also the unofficial queen of Millbrook's social scene. I arrived early and set up my phone to record video, then waited in the parking lot. When Tyler came outside to meet Jennifer, I was ready. "Tyler," I called out, jogging over with a big smile on my face. "Hey, man. I wanted to apologize for last night. I was way out of line." He looked suspicious, but Jennifer was watching, so he had to play along. Okay, thanks, Eric. I mean, just because you're sleeping with my wife doesn't give me the right to embarrass you in public, right?" I said it loud enough for Jennifer and the three other people in the parking lot to hear clearly. Tyler's face went through several colors before settling on purple. "What the hell, Eric?" "Oh, sorry. Was that supposed to be a secret?" I turned to Jennifer, who was staring at us with her mouth open. "Jennifer, right? You might want to find a new trainer. This guy's got some boundary issues when it comes to married women." I walked away before Tyler could respond, leaving him to explain himself to one of the most influential gossips in town. The video I'd recorded was pure gold. Tyler standing there stuttering, while Jennifer backed away from him like he had the plague. I uploaded it to YouTube with the title, "Local Fitness Trainer's Reaction to Being Called Out for Affair," and shared the link on every social media platform I could think of. By evening, it had over 3,000 views. But the real masterpiece was yet to come. I knew Riley and Tyler were planning to attend the monthly neighborhood block party that weekend. It was a big social event where everyone showed off their grilling skills and pretended to like each other. Riley never missed it because it was a chance to network and maintain her image as the perfect suburban wife. I spent 3 days preparing for that party like a general planning a military campaign. First, I visited my friend Mike at the auto shop. Mike owed me a favor from when I'd rewired his garage for free, and he was happy to help me install a little surprise in Tyler's Jeep. "What exactly does this thing do?" Mike asked, looking at the small device I'd bought online. "It's a Bluetooth speaker with a proximity sensor," I explained. "When someone gets within 10 feet of the vehicle, it automatically plays whatever audio file I've programmed into it." "And what audio file would that be?" I played him a sample. It was Riley's voice, recorded during one of her phone conversations with Jess, talking in explicit detail about her sexual encounters with Tyler. Mike's eyes went wide. "Jesus, Eric, that's nuclear. She wants to play games, Mike. I'm just changing the rules." The block party was held in Riverside Park, right in the center of town. Everyone brought folding chairs and coolers, and the local band set up on a small stage. It was like a Norman Rockwell painting. If Norman Rockwell had painted suburban adultery and public humiliation. Riley arrived with Tyler, both of them dressed like they were attending a country club event instead of a neighborhood barbecue. They set up their chairs near the center of the crowd where everyone could see them. I positioned myself across the park with a clear view of Tyler's Jeep, which he'd parked right next to the main walkway. Then I waited. Around 7 p.m., just as the crowd was reaching its peak, Tyler decided to go to his vehicle to get something. The moment he got within range of the proximity sensor, Riley's recorded voice began blasting from his sound system at maximum volume. "Oh God, Tyler, you're so much better than Eric. He has no idea what he's doing in bed. You make me feel like a real woman." The entire park went silent. Every conversation stopped. Every head turned toward the source of the sound. Tyler frantically tried to shut off his stereo, but I'd programmed it to play the full 10-minute recording. Riley's voice continued describing their affair in graphic detail, while Tyler climbed into his Jeep and desperately pressed buttons. Riley was standing in the middle of the crowd, her face white as paper, while 300 of her neighbors listened to her confess to adultery and mock her husband's sexual performance. The recording finally ended, but the damage was complete. People were staring, whispering, pointing. Several women had covered their children's ears. The local pastor was shaking his head in disgust. Riley ran to Tyler's Jeep and they both drove away, leaving their chairs and cooler behind like refugees fleeing a war zone. I stayed for another hour, enjoying the barbecue and listening to the conversations around me. Riley's name was mentioned in every group, and none of it was flattering. Mission accomplished. But I wasn't done yet, not even close. The nuclear option came in the form of a phone call from my friend Danny, the private investigator. "Eric, you need to hear this," he said, his voice tight with urgency. "I've been monitoring Tyler's communications like you asked, and I picked up something big." "How big?" "They're planning to frame you for domestic violence. Tyler's been coaching Riley on how to fake injuries and what to tell the police. They want to get you arrested so Riley can file for divorce, claim she was afraid for her safety, and take everything in the settlement." The blood in my veins turned to liquid nitrogen. "You have proof? Audio, video, text messages, the whole conspiracy. They're planning to do it this weekend." I sat in my apartment, staring at the evidence Danny had collected, and felt something dark and final settle in my chest. Riley wasn't just cheating on me. She was trying to destroy my life, my career, my freedom. She wanted to send me to jail for crimes I didn't commit, while she rode off into the sunset with her boyfriend and my money. The old Eric would have panicked, would have run to a lawyer or begged her to reconsider, but the old Eric was dead and buried. What remained was something colder and infinitely more dangerous. If Riley wanted to play the victim, I was going to give her an audience she'd never forget. I spent the next 2 days preparing for the most important performance of my life. I invited everyone to a mediation meeting at the house. Riley, Tyler, Jess, Amber, even Riley's mother, Barbara. I told them I wanted to apologize and work things out like adults. What they didn't know was that I'd also invited the entire neighborhood through a carefully crafted social media campaign. I told everyone that Riley had something important to announce about our marriage, and that she wanted the whole community to hear it. I also set up a live stream on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, advertising it as The Truth About the Hensley Marriage, live from Millbrook. Saturday evening, as the sun was setting over our quiet suburban street, nearly 200 people gathered on my lawn and in the street. The local news had even sent a reporter after someone tipped them off about a major community event. Riley arrived with her entourage, expecting a private conversation. Instead, she found herself facing a crowd that included her boss, her coworkers, her neighbors, and half the town. "What is this?" she demanded, her voice shaking as she saw the cameras. "This is the truth, sweetheart," I said, stepping up to the microphone I'd borrowed from the local band. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for coming. My wife Riley has something very important to tell you all about our marriage." I played the first recording, Riley and Tyler planning their affair, laughing about how stupid I was, discussing their secret vacations. The crowd's murmur grew louder with each revelation. Riley's face went from white to red to purple as her own voice condemned her in front of everyone she knew. "That's enough," Tyler shouted, pushing through the crowd toward me. "Turn that off right now." "Oh, but we're just getting to the good part," I said, switching to the second recording, the one where they planned to frame me for domestic violence. The crowd's murmur turned to angry shouts. Someone yelled, "Shame!" Another person started booing. Riley's boss, a stern woman named Patricia, was taking notes and shaking her head in disgust. Tyler reached the porch and grabbed for the microphone. I said, "Turn it off." I stepped aside and let him stumble forward, his momentum carrying him down the porch steps. He tumbled into the flower bed, covering his expensive clothes with mud and fertilizer. The crowd erupted in laughter and applause. "Careful there, champ," I called down to him. "Wouldn't want you to get hurt. We all know how much you and Riley like to blame other people for your accidents." Riley was crying now, mascara running down her cheeks as she faced the judgment of her entire community. Her mother, Barbara, was trying to defend her, but even she looked shocked by what she'd heard. "This is illegal," Riley screamed. "You can't record people without their permission." "Actually, I can," I said, holding up a document. "Ohio is a one-party consent state. As long as one person in the conversation knows about the recording, it's perfectly legal. And since I was the one being talked about, I had every right to know what you were saying." The police arrived, summoned by neighbors who were concerned about the crowd. But instead of arresting me, they ended up having to escort Riley and Tyler away from the increasingly hostile crowd. As they were led to separate police cars, Tyler for trespassing, Riley for attempted fraud, I stood on my porch and addressed the community one final time. "Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you all for coming tonight. For 8 years, I thought I was married to a woman who loved me. Instead, I was married to a liar, a cheater, and a criminal. But thanks to all of you, the truth is finally out." The crowd cheered. Someone started chanting, "Eric! Eric! Eric!" and others joined in. I watched the police cars drive away, taking my old life with them, and felt something I hadn't experienced in years: complete and total victory. Riley lost her job the next Monday. Tyler's gym membership was revoked by dozens of clients. Jess and Amber were ostracized by their social circle. Even Barbara, Riley's mother, publicly apologized to me and disowned her daughter's behavior. The divorce was finalized 6 months later. Riley got nothing. Her adultery and fraud attempt voided any claim to alimony or shared assets. The house, the savings, everything stayed with me. Tyler moved to another state after his business collapsed. Riley followed him, but according to mutual friends, their relationship didn't survive the stress of being social pariahs. As for me, I kept the house, got promoted to supervisor at work, and started dating a wonderful woman named Sarah, who thinks my story is hilarious, and my revenge was justified. Sometimes, late at night, I still think about that Valentine's dinner where this all started. Riley sitting there with Tyler, both of them laughing at the stupid husband who was too blind to see what was happening right in front of him. They were right about one thing: I was blind. But when I finally opened my eyes, I saw everything clearly. And what I saw was two people who deserved exactly what they got. Justice isn't always pretty, but sometimes it's absolutely perfect. Next Valentine's Day, I'm taking myself out to dinner. At least I know I won't cheat on me,